Hello everyone, and welcome back to my Jurassic Park accuracy review. Part 1 was loads of fun to make. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you come back here after watching it. We covered the general positives and negatives, then turned our attention to the individual dinosaurs, Brachiosaurus and Dilophosaurus. Oh, and of course Giraffatitan. Lots and lots of Giraffatitan. Today, we'll move on to the rest of Nublar's creatures. Some of them only appear for a single scene, or in some cases, a few frames. Forgive me if it seems like I'm milking this, but every dino deserves some time in the spotlight. So time to keep going, let's dig this up. The chicken mimic Gallimimus makes a brief yet memorable appearance in Jurassic Park. Despite having next to zero presence in the mind of general audiences, they still managed to leave a strong impression.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
We discussed the lack of feathers and pronated wrists last time, but there are still some aspects to appreciate. The general build is looking about right. They're running around for their entire scene, but from what we can tell, they do look like ornithomimids, long snouts or bills, long slender legs, and relatively short tails for theropods. These are common traits in the family. Their appearance superficially resembled that of modern ratites. So much so in fact that I've seen a paper from the 60s that placed these modern flightless birds as the direct descendants of ornithomimids. It's like when that one kid copies your homework but changes it to not be obvious. Another thing the film gets right is its size. Yeah, Gallimimus was slender and fleet-footed, but we still see just how massive they are. Up to the hip, they already reach 2 meters in height, which is spot on. Alan Grant makes a good size comparison here. It's hard to say how long they are in the film, but the actual animal reached 6 meters or 20 feet. At 450 kilograms, or about 1,000 pounds, Gallimimus was the largest family member. I've always found it odd that in the video games, Operation Genesis and Evolution, it always appeared smaller than its real life and on-screen counterparts, being at eye level with the unfortunate patrons. Thankfully, that's not a problem here. Another win is their speed. Dinosaurs, theropods, and Gallimimus especially, were very bird-like. We saw this last time, how they had hollow bones, a skeleton filled with air sacs, and higher metabolisms. These adaptations would have helped them move similar to what we see here. Studies have placed their top speed at 56 kilometers per hour. Not the fastest animal ever, but they could certainly outrun a human. But now, last point, did Gallimimus move in flocks? Gregarious behavior has been speculated. Many eyes working together would keep them safe from, say, a Tarbosaurus. Are there any mass graves of ornithomimids? Not that I can find. A Pachyrhinosaurus situation would have made this research easier. In the Gobi Desert though, 13 trackways were found from 3-toed galley-like dinos with an associated Gallimimus foot underneath. So maybe this counts as evidence? I'm not paying for the full paper on that, so let's call this critical research failure and move on. Next up on InGen's list is the charismatic Parasaurolophus, which only makes a minor cameo. Seriously, Stan Lee received some bigger roles. With its short-lived appearance, I only have two things to say. On those murals in the background of the visitor center, we see a depiction of Parasaurolophus along some Dromaeosaurid. I guess the actual animal lived alongside Dromaeosaurus and Sauornitholestes, so that's not the problem. My minuscule nitpick is that we see a mixed group consisting of what I guess are supposed to be males and females due to the different colorations and differently shaped crests. This sounds like a fun instance of clear sexual dimorphism, but in actuality, these variations came from being two separate species. Parasaurolophus walkeri, the Canadian species, is what you typically picture with its taller, elongated crest. The southwestern species, P. certocristatus, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, had features once thought to be indicative of females. This is the smallest of the Parasaurolophus species, and its crest is, for lack of a better term, the saddest. It's shorter, rounder, and droopier. Not sure if that's a scientific term. And secondly, it wouldn't be a Jurassic Park video if I didn't throw shade at the terrible Jurassic World trilogy. It's like a Raimi versus Webb situation here.
It is evolving, just backwards.
The Parasaurolophus design in the originals is leagues ahead of the world films. Yeah, they both have that lean, muscular build reminiscent of the dinosaur renaissance, but at least the creature here is actually quadrupedal. Well, a quadruped most of the time, but still able to rear up on its hind limbs to run, kinda like real life. The world movies show the opposite, usual bipeds that get on all fours on occasion. It's stupid. Why are the dinosaurs getting less accurate? That brings us to what was Dr. Grant's favorite dinosaur, Triceratops. I know I should only review the science, but come on, this is one of the most beautiful scenes in the film. Spielberg clearly captured the wonder and majesty of these long-gone animals. What awesome special effects too. The trike animatronic looks so lifelike, and the actors seem just as blown away as us audiences. They chew up every bit of scenery. I guess that counts as another win for Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs are just animals. Herbivores here get to chill and go about their lives rather than being constant cannon fodder for the theropods. And those dangerous theropods get moments of carnage as they wreak mayhem, but still get moments to behave animalistically. Small scenes of cute silliness further bring them to life, something that's missing in many prehistoric portrayals. Now onto the creature's anatomy. Well, it's a mixed bag. It very clearly is a Triceratops. The filmmakers didn't take any crazy creative liberties with this one, so we're definitely on the right track. I want to say this is Triceratops horridus due to the more curved and pronounced brow horns, and a nose horn that isn't quite as long as those seen in the slightly younger T. prorsus. Unlike other members of the roster, the integument is done well here. I, along with other paleo YouTubers, complain often about the lack of feathers or dinosaurs having the wrong kinds of feathers. Well, getting the scales right is just as important. What's shown in the scene is an accurate, pebbly sort of texture. Their skin was rough and bumpy with some larger scales projecting outwards. Maybe Jurassic Park didn't go crazy enough with the projections, but did nicely overall. There are two hiccups though. Like Brachiosaurus, the feet seem way too elephantine, except this time we can actually get a good look at them. Ceratopsians started out as weird bipedal ornithischians, but evolved to be large quadrupeds, so their design should reflect that. Rather than pronated wrists and elephant nails, 3 fingers were walked on, while the smaller 4th and 5th fingers served little function, if any. Yeah, it's easy to draw comparisons to rhinos and elephants, but it's important to know where those similarities begin and end. The other small negative is the inclusion of epiccipitals, those little spikes you see protruding from the frill. These inclusions might make the Triceratops look more fearsome, but really, they're only this present, this well defined in juveniles.
He's just a kid.
Over time, as each individual ages, the epiccipitals rounded out until they merged into the rest of their frill. Old adults possess these round, smooth frills. Whether Grant is hugging an adult or what seems to be a subadult, this is too much. Well, it looks like I can't go without discussing T-Rex for 5 minutes. Due to its immense popularity, Tyrannosaurus appears in every other documentary. It was probably the greatest and the largest predator to ever walk the earth, so I get it. But I'd love to discuss some new subjects for a change. Spielberg's interpretation of this theropod has garnered more praise than the others from a scientific standpoint. Do I agree? Yes, there are some bright spots, but so much wrong. Again, wrong from a scientific standpoint, not from a filmmaking one. The giant Rex puppet looks fantastic. Stan Winston Studios did an amazing job, and the CGI still holds up well. Better than what the MCU is churning out these days. On the bright side, this is very clearly Tyrannosaurus, and not some monster or some confusing mishmash. That bulky theropod body, large head, long teeth, and short 2-fingered limbs all point to none other than the king itself. Actually, those arms in particular are nicely done. Rewatching this classic for research, I never noticed before how effort was put in getting the finger lengths correct. In plenty of portrayals, you'll see their 2 fingers the same length when this wasn't the case. The first digit was smaller than the second. Also, just having 2 fingers per hand should be a given, but in pop culture, especially at this time, it wasn't. 3-fingered Tyrannosaurus doesn't exist. 3-fingered Tyrannosaurus can't hurt you. 3-fingered Tyrannosaurus. Another positive is how, like Triceratops, JP gets the scales right, but this time they're not big and bumpy. No, T-Rex and its close relatives have left impressions of relatively small scales that would have given them a more leathery appearance. This is despite the fact that their distantly related Tyrannosauroid uncle, Eutyrannus, possessed plumage. Maybe the leathery look is only due to the limitations of CGI at the time, but it's technically right. Sparse feathering on certain portions of the body is still possible, but can't be supported by any direct evidence, unlike the scales. On the Rex's face are large keratinous coverings, forming what can almost be described as horns above the eyes. Keratin is the material from which hair, skin, nails, horns, hooves, and more features are made. While probably not as exaggerated as the massive brow ridges here, Tyrannosaurus was likely adorned with a similar facial display above the eyes and on the nose. These areas of the skull show a bumpy, rugose texture indicative of hard keratinous coverings. More evidence comes from the living Coelurosaur theropods, which show a wide variety of these decorations. A T-Rex may have been just as bizarre and just as colorful. The last compliment I'll give is that, well, thank goodness Jack Horner didn't ruin this one. He's been involved in the franchise since the very beginning, becoming the basis for Crichton's character Dr. Grant. He then became the paleontologist consultant for each film in the franchise, even making a cameo in 2015's Jurassic World. For those of you unaware, Horner is the paleontologist who pushed a scavenger T-Rex idea that this carnivore never actually hunted, but only ate what was already dead.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
This hypothesis has since gone into the big waste pile of dumb Tyrannosaurus ideas, along with the kangaroo stance and 3 separate species. Spielberg wouldn't have wanted to deviate from the novel so much that the Rex never actually attacks anyone, but also Horner hadn't invented this dribble yet. The first utterance of a pure scavenger T-Rex came a year later in an article he wrote. The washed-out scientist continued to push his claim in several documentaries such as The Ultimate Guide to T-Rex, Valley of the T-Rex, and T-Rex Warrior or Wimp. While the first Jurassic Park was spared, 2001's JP3 did not fare nearly as well. Jack Horner looked at the fish-eating Spinosaurus and thought, this is much more suited as a terrestrial predator than Tyrannosaurus Rex, hence why they show it getting utterly clapped by Spino.
Just stop! Just stop it!
By the way, thank you Rick Raptor for making this info easy to find. You must see his Valley of the Thick Rex review if you haven't. Great stuff. Anyway, thank you film for showing a hunting T-Rex. That wraps up the positives. Now for the banes of paleontologists going on 30 years now. Although the general look is good enough, the design still has some faults. Tyrannosaurus' head wasn't really this round or this blunt. It's very exaggerated in this regard. This is Hollywood, so it makes sense. Those banana-sized teeth too are constantly on full display, even when the Rex closes her mouth. Perhaps this makes her look more terrifying, but Tyrannosaurus, along with pretty much every non-avian theropod, most likely had immobile lips. I've explained this a few times before. To speak in gamer terms for a second, this is the default setting for tetrapods. Most terrestrial vertebrates, even many aquatic chordates, cover their teeth with lips. Direct observations of Rex skulls reveal more similarities to scaly-lipped lizards than to the toothy grinning crocodilians, though we may never know the exact look of these soft tissue structures. The speed of T-Rex has varied significantly over the years, from over 40 miles per hour down to 11 miles per hour. Different studies have shown different results. One study in 2017, done by Dr. Friedrich Schiller, gave a top speed of 17 miles per hour based on the amount of energy a T-Rex would have expended by sprinting. In the same year though, another study claimed that moving any faster than 11 miles per hour would have broken their legs, so T-Rex, along with other large theropods, couldn't have run. It is worth noting though that despite their large size, tyrannosaurids were more agile than other large carnivores. This is in large part due to their arctometatarsus. Their foot bones, or metacarpals, fused together over the third toe, forming a structure that could absorb more shock. Maybe Tyrannosaurus could have outran other giants, but certainly not a car. The 32 miles per hour stated by John Hammond is way too fast. Somewhere in the teens, maybe even 20 miles per hour is more realistic. If you're a fit human, you may be able to outrun one. When driving a car, you're safe for sure. One gripe that applies to Jurassic Park and pretty much all dinosaur portrayals is the inclusion of roaring. You've heard it before, but I'll say it again. Dinosaurs couldn't roar. They didn't possess the larynx or voice box of mammals or even the syrinx of birds, so such epic, sophisticated noises were off limits to them. Now, this doesn't mean they made no sounds. Modern crocodilians also lack such vocal organs, yet are still able to produce a wide variety of hisses, bellows, and growls. Tyrannosaurus in the film, though, makes alligator sounds, yes, but also takes from lions and elephants.
Wait, that's illegal.
And that leaves us with the biggest sin, eyesight based on movement. This plot device was entirely made up for Crichton's novel and carried over into this adaptation. Now, I recognize that the Lost World book does seemingly retcon this, but that's not what I'm here for. Novel canon and film canon are clearly different. Maybe a few blanks can be filled in with the novels, you know, things that are implied but not explicitly stated, but for the most part, the two versions are definitely separate. In Spielberg's Jurassic Park, it's made clear that Tyrannosaurus can't see you if you don't move, then it's never contradicted. All these technicalities aside, yeah, this is a garbage theory. Good entertainment, for sure, but terrible science. Experts know that this animal had some of the best vision to ever occur in nature. In 2006, Dr. Kent Stevens estimated that their vision would have been 13 times better than a human's, even better than modern birds of prey. Forget not noticing you right in front of it, heck, they would spot you up to 6 kilometers away. And notice the placement of their eyes on the head. Similar to many modern predators, their eyes face forwards. With such a high amount of overlap in their vision, 55 degrees, T-Rex had superb binocular vision, judging the distance between its jaws and your face with extreme accuracy. And finally, that brings us to our last dinosaur, what is probably the main antagonist of Jurassic Park, Velociraptor. Well, not really. The actual Velociraptor mongoliensis is a small 2-meter dromaeosaurid, or raptor, that lived in Central Asia. Whatever we're watching here is a human-sized dromaeosaurid from Montana. What is it, you may ask? You know the answer already. It's Deinonychus. The larger size, geography, and skull shape give it away. Velociraptor had a more narrow snout with an upturned nose, while the still elongated snout of Deinonychus matches more what we get here. Estimates of 6 feet high and 9 feet long are given in Jurassic Park when the actual animal was 3 feet at the hip and 11 feet long. And the novel shows us exactly what's going on in Crichton's head when misnaming the raptor. He uses a scientific name, Velociraptor anteropus, a smoking gun. This smashes the genus name Velociraptor with the specific name Deinonychus anteropus, lumping the latter as another species of Velociraptor. This idea came from paleontologist Gregory S. Paul, who, in his 1988 book, controversially lumped the two. So let me get this straight. Paul thought two distinct raptors of vastly different sizes from different continents, separated by over 30 million years, should be lumped into a single genus, yet when there are small, inconsistent variations in T-Rex dentition and femur width, we need to erect two new species.
Allosaurus had never seen such proof before.
This dumb decision would have been forgotten as quickly as it came if it wasn't for Crichton immortalizing it in his book. Some fans will also argue that Hollywood's Velociraptors were based on Utah Raptor. This is just wrong. Utahraptor wouldn't receive a description until a week after Jurassic Park's release. That's not even talking production, pre-production, and the 1990 novel into account. Plus, the portrayal is far too light and gracile compared to the heavyweight Utahraptor. With all that said, I'll continue to use the name Velociraptor when referring to this movie creature, but I'll make comparisons to Deinonychus. If I need to mention the actual Velociraptor, I'll let you know. Like every other dinosaur I've mentioned, the overall build works for me. Once again, everything is in the right ballpark, or I guess almost everything. This is of course aside from the exaggerated size, pronated wrists, and lack of feathers. It's still definitely a dromaeosaurid with that sickle claw, long snout, large eyes, small yet blade-like teeth, and light frame. Not to beat a dead horse, but I always preferred the Jurassic Park raptors to their Jurassic World counterparts. No, this isn't a nostalgia thing, but like with the Parasaurolophus, their design was miles ahead. Dromaeosaurids in real life were these super deadly glass cannons. Their bones were hollow and built lightweight, but were packed with long hand claws and talons. The filmmakers used these qualities to make them feel so distinct from other movie monsters, like these ferocious dinosaur ballerina ninjas. Velociraptors were delicate yet super agile here, but later were turned into these big, bulky alligator things. Just look at those fat heads. It's like I'm looking at an Allosaurus wannabe or something. It should be obvious, but Deinonychus should look like Deinonychus.
Know your fucking place, trash!
Velociraptors throughout the franchise are given another win, lips. I'm not sure why, but this has been the norm for dromaeosaurid depictions during our entire knowledge of their existence, yet is still an upward battle for large theropods like Tyrannosaurus. Reptiles like predatory dinosaurs wouldn't have had the face muscles to move and flex them around like we can, which is done sorta well, aside from this one weird snarl moment. Another detail I appreciate are the raptor's eyes. Eyes obviously do not fossilize, so paleontologists don't have any direct evidence to tell us what their eyes looked like, but logical inferences can be made depending on the lifestyle of a creature. You may have noticed modern paleoart implementing horizontal goat-like pupils on herbivorous dinosaurs because of how common it is in modern herbivores. This adaptation allows them a wider field of view to scan for predators while also limiting the amount of sunlight taken in. For Velociraptor, or really Deinonychus, if we know what its niche was, then we can take an educated guess. Well, luckily for us, a study was done in 2011 that analyzed the scleral rings around their eyes. Although rare to find, we know that dinosaurs, including birds, have these. The light conditions in which an animal prefers to be active informs the shape of their rings. Observations on those in the real Mongolian Velociraptor show that they were suited for low light conditions, being most active at night, dawn, or dusk. So slit pupils are a reasonable assumption because they catch more light at night, yet during the day retain good colored vision. Think of cats or foxes or crocodiles. I still love those round JP3 pupils, those eyes pierced into the depth of your soul, but the slit style is more likely. And now that takes us into the problems. So many dromaeosaurid myths were either created or perpetuated by Jurassic Park. Hopefully, the next pop culture defining dinosaur media can adjust the public's perception. One such myth is their speed. Fun fact, the name Dromaeosaurus, the family's namesake, means running lizard.
Fast for a biped? Cheetah speed? 50, 60 miles per hour if they ever got out in the open.
Yeah, I'm sure they can outrun a person, but that's insane. John Ostrom himself, who described Deinonychus, at first saw them as extremely quick, but later, after finding leg bones, reduced such expectations. He observed the ratio between the foot and lower leg, which he found surprisingly low at 0.48, unlike fleet-footed ostriches at 0.95 and Struthiomimus at 0.68. Ostrom believed they had shorter foot bones to balance their running adaptations with predatory abilities, using their feet for attacking, so they'd have to be resistant to stress. Long story short, the running lizards weren't all that well adapted for running, and they weren't lizards either. Ostrom didn't come up with an exact speed estimate, but certainly not cheetah level. So was he right about Deinonychus? Did they use their feet for killing? His idea was that the killing claw would have been used in a kicking motion. Later interpretations brought on the idea of raptors disemboweling prey. We never got to see this in a Jurassic movie, probably to stay PG-13, but this is stated as fact. If I'm remembering correctly, Alan in Dominion retcons this by saying velociraptors were smart enough to go straight for the neck. I may be wrong there, I only bothered to see it once, but again,
We don't care, cuz we don't.
this fun hypothesis has been tested for Deinonychus and Velociraptor mongoliensis with robotic models made of their hind limbs. A makeshift killing claw was slammed into pig flesh and left a hole. No slicing, no cutting, no disembowelment occurred. Yeah, these claws were very pointy, able to puncture flesh, but lacking in sharp cutting edges. Then if not for spilling intestines, what were they used for? Well, perhaps we can look at modern birds of prey for an answer. They dig into prey with their talons, pinning them down. While incapacitated, true raptors eat their catch alive. In dromaeosaurids, the act of raptor prey restraint has been proposed. Deinonychus could have leaped onto its next meal, dug its claws in, pinned a poor creature down, then began feasting. And if need be, they could have flapped their wings for stability. This sounds just as, if not more terrifying than having your guts spilled. One Deinonychus would have been bad enough, but they are often depicted as hunting in packs. We see this not only in each Jurassic Park movie, but so much paleo art and in so many dinosaur documentaries. Walking with Dinosaurs, Dinosaur Revolution, Jurassic Fight Club, Monsters Resurrected, Dinosaur Planet, and many others continuously show pack hunting dromaeosaurids. Evidence has been presented by John Ostrom himself, who found Deinonychus remains in association with Tyrannosaurus in Montana's Cloverleaf Formation, and with a similar occurrence in Oklahoma's Antler Formation. Deinonychus teeth and skeletons twice found with Tyrannosaurus point to a predator-prey relationship, or at least the ornithopod was scavenged. More evidence comes from a giant block containing several Utahraptor specimens and one iguanodontian. And fossil trackways of 6 dromaeosaurid individuals have been found in China. Apparently, they were moving in the same direction. This stack of evidence seems compelling, but each has their own flaws. The Deinonychus found near Tyrannosaurus were smaller individuals, probably being killed by infighting over the carcass or some crazy feeding frenzy rather than dying valiantly together in battle. Nah, the bigger Gigachad Deinonychus probably just had to assert their dominance. And even if they did kill the Tyrannosaurus together, it was probably in a loose gang with individuals acting on their own behalf, kinda like with Komodo dragons and the occasional crocodile group. The Utahraptors likely weren't pack hunting either. Rather, the giant block represents a predator trap, with individual hunters coming for an easy meal, not knowing they're walking to their death, getting trapped in mud. The best evidence is probably the tracks, but several raptors moving towards the same direction at the same time doesn't mean they live together. Other, more simple explanations can be given, like moving to a carcass or water together. Despite their portrayals in popular culture, we still don't have any definitive evidence to prove that they live together. As usual, I don't have any personal vendetta against velociraptor packs. It doesn't burn my soul to watch. A pack lifestyle is just very hard to prove. While it sounds fun and it works great in movies, we can't leap to conclusions. There are more likely scenarios. The pack hunting is directly tied to another myth that velociraptors were these super intelligent predators. All of this is total blockbuster nonsense. Yes, the real velociraptor and other dromaeosaurids had proportionally larger brains than most other dinosaurs, but that didn't make them Markiplier smart. Same goes for Tyrannosaurus, which would have been pretty big brain too, with cerebrums comparable to those of chimps. At best, they had possum or rabbit intellect, not nearly as intelligent as cats, babies, dolphins, or chimps. They may have been reptile smart, but not mammal smart. This in turn means they couldn't open doors. Not that it's always a sign of extreme intelligence, many animals can pull this off, but raptors weren't dexterous enough either. Again, they couldn't rotate their wrists like humans. After all that, I know some sad soul in the comments is going to mention frog DNA. Jurassic Park isn't supposed to be accurate, yada yada yada, we've heard it before. Yeah, those are bad takes. None of these inaccuracies are due to the inclusion of frog DNA. That's never what the film was implying. The dinosaurs were made to be as accurate as possible in universe. While I have all this JP footage, I'll cover this in my next video, debunking this terrible argument. And that's not to call anyone out, it's just a very pervasive bad take, so no one specifically is being targeted here. Well, that's 1700 words spilled on Velociraptor or Deinonychus. Whatever you want to call it, let's wrap up this special. That's a lot of ink spilled over a 29-year-old film. Yeah, there are buttloads of articles and videos on Jurassic Park's inaccuracies. I was sure to discuss them at length myself, but I gotta give the filmmakers credit where credit is due. They successfully implemented many great ideas from the dinosaur renaissance, revolutionizing the public's view of dinosaurs. There was a lot done right. The general depiction of dinosaurs was great for its time, but with embellishments and Hollywood magic thrown in to spice things up. I'd say that Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park deserves a not terrible D. Definitely an A movie, but accuracy-wise, better than some documentaries I've seen. Once again, thank you everyone for a wonderful few years of YouTubing. I'm so happy to have a great community of supporters, and really, it's nice to know that I gave at least some enjoyment and knowledge to 20,000 people. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to please leave a like, subscribe, and check out my social media. See you next time.